The knock on my door came at 6 in the morning, right on the dot. "You still alive in there?" My daughter's voice, Heidi's, drifted through the wood, a mix of a joke and a real check-in. I groaned and pushed myself upright, feeling the years in my knees. As her footsteps faded away, I caught a whisper, almost swallowed by the hallway. "He thinks I do not hear him." What a burden. I just sat there for a long while, staring at that door, letting those 2 words sink in. This house. I built this place with my own hands, pouring sweat and blood into every inch. But to them, I am already on my way out. What they do not know is that I have a little secret, one that is going to turn this whole place and their lives upside down. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment where you are watching from. The air in the room smelled like old wood and dust. My hands rested on the blanket my late wife, Ingrid, knitted a lifetime ago. Every single stitch still held the warmth of her patience. She had a knack for making even the smallest things feel like they would last forever, like nothing bad could ever happen as long as you had something she made. After she passed on 3 winters back, the silence in this house became a living, breathing thing. So Heidi moved in with her husband, Wolfgang, and their son, Max, to keep an eye on me. She said it was to help out, and I believed her back then. I do not anymore. When I shuffled out into the hall, the air just felt different, thinner somehow. Heidi's voice was floating in from the kitchen, bright and bubbly in that fake way she gets when she is talking to Wolfgang. "He's still sleeping," she said, and then I heard the soft clink of ceramic mugs. I know the routine now. She will bring me my coffee, but only after she and Wolfgang have had their own little breakfast, like I am an afterthought in my own home. I leaned against the banister, my fingers brushing the smooth wood I sanded myself close to 40 years back. Every single corner of this place has a piece of me in it. All those weekends spent hammering nails with Ingrid holding the other end of the board. The late nights wiring the lights myself because I could not afford to hire an electrician. The summers the first spent sweating through shingles on the roof. It is more than just a house, it is proof that I built something that would last. At least, that is what I thought. Heidi spotted me the second I walked into the kitchen. "Morning, Dad," she said, her voice a little tight but polite enough for Max, who was sitting at the table, spooning cereal into his mouth. "Coffee is on the counter." Wolfgang did not even look up from his phone. "Morning," he grumbled, his thumbs still flying. I caught a glimpse of a real estate app on his screen. I took my coffee black, no sugar. Heidi used to know I liked 1 spoonful, but she does not bother anymore. "You are up early," she said, rinsing her mug in the sink. "Big day today." I did not ask what she meant. I have learned that in this house, asking questions just gets you answers you would rather not hear. Instead, I just sipped my coffee and watched Max, his legs swinging under his chair, completely oblivious to the tension that was tightening around us grown-ups. Finally, Wolfgang put his phone down. "Heidi and I have been talking. We think it is time we made some changes around here." I kept my eyes on the steam rising from the mug. "Changes?" Heidi jumped in. "This place is just too big for you to handle, Dad. It is a ton of work. We could help you downsize, get you somewhere easier to maintain, maybe closer to a doctor." The meaning was crystal clear. I was not a person to them anymore, I was a project, an inconvenience that needed to be cleaned up. I took another sip before speaking. "And what about the house?" Wolfgang and Heidi exchanged a look. "We have been looking at buyers. The market is strong right now." The market. As if this house was just another piece of property, not the very heart of my life. I did not say a word. I just nodded slowly, the way a man does when he is memorizing every single word so he can hide what is really going on. That afternoon, I headed out to my workshop in the garage. Most of the tools are covered in dust now, but the familiar smell of oil and wood shavings wrapped around me like an old friend. This is where I keep the safe. Heidi and Wolfgang think it is just for old papers, like birth certificates, the deed to the house, and Ingrid's jewelry. They do not know about the secret compartment hidden behind a false back panel. They have never seen the ledger or the small velvet pouch that could change everything. I ran my hand over the metal door of the safe, feeling the weight of the years. Ingrid and I had planned for the future, really planned. Not just for retirement, but for all the what-ifs. You never know, Klaus, she used to say, what people will turn into when money is on the table. She was right. God, she was right. From the garage window, I could see Heidi out in the yard on the phone. Her voice was too far away for me to make out, but I recognized the tilt of her head, the pacing she does when she is wheeling and dealing. She was smiling, but not the way she smiles at Max. This smile was for someone she wanted to impress. I opened the safe and checked that everything was still there. It was, the envelope with the lawyer's letter, the signed documents Ingrid and I tucked away, and the bank statements. I am not ready to use them yet, but soon. Dinner was a quiet thing that night. Max talked about a school project, his voice rising and falling in that innocent way kids have when they think everyone is listening. Heidi nodded. Wolfgang chewed, and I kept my eyes on my plate. When Max asked if we could build a birdhouse together that weekend, Heidi cut in before I could answer. We'll see, honey. Grandpa has a lot on his plate. I did not argue. Instead, I caught Max's eye and gave him a smile. We will make time, I told him. He grinned, and for a moment, the heavy feeling in my chest lifted. After dinner, I went back to my room. The knock would come again the next morning, right on schedule. But every single day now, I feel the clock ticking. Not the clock on the wall, but the one inside me. And when it rings, Heidi and Wolfgang are not going to know what hit them. The next morning, the knock came later than usual, at 6:15 instead of 6 on the dot. That told me right there that Heidi was in a mood. And sure enough, when she pushed the door open without waiting for an answer, her voice was flat. Dad, can you watch Max today? He is home from school. Something about a teacher's conference. She did not look at me, already halfway down the hall toward the kitchen. No good morning. No asking if I had eaten breakfast. I have stopped expecting the small things. They are like coins in a jar. When people stop putting them in, the silence is just deafening. Max came in a few minutes later, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up every which way. Grandpa, can we make the birdhouse today? His eyes lit up the way only a 9-year-old's can, full of the belief that the world will always say yes to him. I told him we could get started after breakfast. It was a promise I intended to keep. Not because Heidi wanted me to keep him busy, but because I needed to hold on to at least one person in this house who looked at me without doing math in their head about what I was worth. In the kitchen, Wolfgang was standing by the counter pouring himself coffee. He did not offer me any. He was wearing that smug, half-smile he gets when he thinks he is a step ahead. Got a showing today, he said casually, like he was talking about the weather. A showing? I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, a couple is looking for a property like this. Big yard, quiet street, prime spot. I stirred my oatmeal slowly. And do they know the property is not for sale? He sipped his coffee. Not yet. Heidi walked in, keys jingling in her hand. Wolfgang, do not be late for that. And Dad, we will be back around 6. Dinner will be late, so just figure something out for you and Max. She did not even notice the way Max frowned at that. He hears more than she gives him credit for. When they left, the air felt lighter somehow. Max and I headed out to the garage. I pulled out the scrap wood I had been saving for the birdhouse. The smell of sawdust filled the space, and for a while, the rhythm of sanding and hammering drowned out everything else. Max chattered on about his friends, his favorite science experiment, and how he wanted to see the ocean someday. You will, I told him, and when you do, you will remember that first time for the rest of your life. Around noon, we took a break. While Max ate a sandwich, I checked the safe again. I did not open the secret compartment, just the main one, enough to make sure everything looked normal. It is a habit now, like checking the locks before bed. Inside the velvet pouch was Ingrid's engagement ring, the one Heidi had once asked to borrow for a party and never returned. I told her it was at the jeweler's for a cleaning. In truth, I had hidden it away because I knew the day would come when sentiment would lose to greed. The lawyer's letter was still there, too, its seal unbroken. Sometimes I am tempted to open it early just to read Ingrid's words again, but I made myself a promise, not until the time is right. She had wanted it that way. Max and I finished the birdhouse just before Heidi and Wolfgang came back. Heidi barely even looked at it. "Cute," she said, already scrolling through her phone. Wolfgang muttered something about clutter in the garage as he walked past. Max's smile faltered, and I put a hand on his shoulder. "We will hang it up tomorrow," I told him. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the years after Ingrid died. The first year was the hardest, learning to cook for one, how the bed felt too big, how the quiet after sunset seemed to press against my chest. Heidi's offer to move in had felt like a lifesaver back then. "We will help each other," she had said. But little by little, the balance shifted. My routines became theirs to rearrange. My fridge was stocked with their stuff. My yard was hosting their friends' barbecues. They never asked outright for the deed, but the talk circled closer and closer to it, like sharks testing the water. A few months back, I overheard Heidi on the phone, whispering about liquidating assets and timing the market. I did not confront her. Instead, I called my lawyer the next day. That was when the plan started to come together. It is not about getting revenge. It is more about a correction, a way to put things back to where Ingrid and I always intended them to be. The next weekend, I decided to test the waters. At breakfast, I mentioned an old friend from my construction days who was thinking of downsizing. He said he might sell his place for cheap. "Ocean view, even," I said. Heidi perked right up. "Where?" "Just outside Berlin," I said casually. "Needs a little work, but it has got potential." Wolfgang glanced at Heidi. I could see the wheels turning in both their heads. Berlin means money, vacation rentals, weekend getaways. Heidi smiled a little too sweetly. "That could be nice for you, Dad. Smaller place, sea air. You would love it." I took a sip of my coffee, hiding the smile that was fighting to get out. The bait was set. That afternoon, I took Max to the park. We sat on a bench by the pond, tossing pieces of bread to the ducks. "Grandpa," he said, "why does Mom always look mad when you talk about the house?" I paused. "Sometimes grown-ups think about things like money and forget about things like home." He nodded slowly, like he understood more than he should. When we got back, Heidi was in the living room with a stack of papers. She shoved them into a drawer when she saw me. "Just bills," she said too quickly. I did not push it. I have learned to be patient. You do not build a house in one day, and you do not take apart a scheme in one either. That night, I wrote a letter to my lawyer. Nothing too detailed, just a note to confirm the documents were still in place and to set a date for a meeting. I slipped it into the outgoing mail before Heidi woke up the next morning. The knock came at 6 again, right back on schedule. But this time, when Heidi called through the door, her voice was a little too bright. "Morning, Dad. Busy day today. We have a surprise for you." I could guess what it was. And I was ready. The surprise Heidi had mentioned was anything but. She and Wolfgang were waiting in the living room when I came down for breakfast, papers spread across the coffee table like they were getting ready for a business meeting. Heidi was wearing her professional smile, the one she used to practice in front of the mirror before job interviews. Wolfgang, meanwhile, had his sleeves rolled up, leaning back in his chair like this was already a done deal. "Morning, Dad," Heidi said, patting the couch cushion beside her. "We have been talking about options. You know, ways to make life easier for you." I did not sit down. Instead, I got my coffee from the kitchen counter and stood by the doorway. "Life's pretty easy already," I said, blowing on the steam. Wolfgang leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. "We have been looking at some retirement communities. Great amenities, medical staff on site, and social events. You would be around people your age. And away from people my family's age," I replied. Heidi's smile flickered, but she kept going. "It is just, this house is a lot to manage. Yard work, repairs, utilities, and honestly, Dad, it is just not safe for you to be climbing ladders or shoveling snow." I took a slow sip of coffee. "I built this house. Every board, every nail. I know it better than anyone. If it needs fixing, I will fix it." Heidi and Wolfgang exchanged a quick look. That look said more than their words ever could. It said they had practiced this. They had already made their decision, and my part was just to go along with it. Wolfgang slid a shiny brochure across the table. "Just look at it. The units are spacious, and the buy-in would be completely covered if we repurposed this property." "Repurposed?" I repeated. "Is that what we are calling it now?" Heidi sighed, like I was just being difficult. "Dad, this is an opportunity. You would have a smaller, easier place, and we could put the equity from this house into something more productive." "Productive for who?" I asked. Neither of them answered. Max wandered in, rubbing his eyes. "Grandpa, are we still going to the park today?" Heidi tensed up. "Not today, Max. Grandpa is busy." I knelt down to Max's level. "We will go tomorrow, buddy. I promise." He nodded, but his shoulders slumped as he headed to the kitchen. I turned back to Heidi and Wolfgang. "I will think about it," I said, knowing full well my mind was already made up. When they finally left for the day, I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. "It is time," I told him. "We set a date for next week. That would be the first real step." That afternoon, I walked the whole property, making mental notes, not about repairs, but about memories. The back porch where Ingrid and I drank coffee on summer mornings. The oak tree we planted the year Heidi was born, now tall enough to throw shade over half the yard. The mark on the garage wall where Max learned to ride his bike. They see a property. I see a life. Over the next few days, Heidi's whole attitude changed. She was sweeter, more attentive, as if she was trying to soften me up. She brought me coffee in the mornings, asked about my sleep, and even made my favorite soup one night. But the timing was just too convenient. Thursday rolled around, and while she was at her job and Wolfgang was out, I got a knock on the door. It was a man in a blazer carrying a clipboard. "Here to do the appraisal," he said. "Appraisal for what?" I asked. He hesitated for just a second. "The upcoming sale." I told him there was no sale and shut the door in his face. Then I called Heidi. She picked up on the second ring, her voice a little too breezy. "Oh, Dad, that must have been a mistake. I will handle it." She did not even say she was sorry. That night, after they thought I had gone to bed, I could hear Heidi and Wolfgang arguing in the kitchen. Words like deadline and buyer floated up the stairs. Wolfgang's voice was sharp. Heidi's was defensive. The next morning, I decided it was time to turn up the heat, but quietly. I spent a few hours in the attic, going through boxes that Ingrid and I had put away years ago. Most of it was just old stuff, holiday decorations, tools, photo albums. But tucked away in one box was the ledger from my construction business, page after page of careful records, including all the cash jobs that nobody knew about but me. Those jobs paid for a lot of things, Max's college tuition, family vacations, and even the early mortgage payments on this house. They also paid for something else, something I never told Heidi about, a private account at a bank she did not even know existed. The balance was not huge, but it was enough. Enough for me to make my own moves without asking for anybody's permission. That afternoon, I went to the bank in person. I met with the manager, a man I had known since he was a teller. We talked behind the closed door of his office. By the time I left, I had made arrangements for some important documents to be stored securely in their vault, along with a small safe deposit box in my name. When I got home, Heidi was in the driveway talking to a woman I did not recognize. The woman had a notepad and a measuring tape. They both stopped talking when I walked up. "This is just a friend," Heidi said quickly. "She is into home design." I nodded like I believed her. That evening, Max found me in the garage. "Grandpa, Mom told me we might move. She says you will have a new place and we will visit." I set down the screwdriver in my hand. "Did she now?" Max bit his lip. "I do not want to visit. I want you here." I got down on one knee so we were at the same level. Sometimes people make plans without asking the right questions. But here is the thing, Max's plans can change. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded slowly like he had decided he would trust me. The rest of the week was a balancing act, me acting like I did not know a thing while quietly putting all the pieces in place. I met with my lawyer again, finalizing paperwork Ingrid had started before she passed. Her foresight was the foundation for everything I was about to do. By Sunday, Heidi's patience was wearing thin. At breakfast, she said, "Dad, we cannot keep dragging this out. There is an offer on the table, and it is a good one. We should take it." I looked her right in the eye. "And what if I say no?" She put her fork down a little too hard. "Then you are making a big mistake." Wolfgang jumped in. "You are not thinking about the long term here, Klaus. This is about security for all of us." "I already have security," I said quietly. "You just do not know where it is." Heidi frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" I did not answer. "Not yet. The truth is, I had been patient for a good 3 months. But patience has an expiration date, and mine was just about up." Monday morning arrived with a thin, brittle sky, that pale winter sunlight that looks warmer than it feels. I was at the kitchen table, coffee in my hand, when Heidi walked in, already dressed for work. Her heels clicked against the tile like periods at the end of every sentence. Wolfgang followed behind, tie crooked, scrolling on his phone. They were not talking to each other. Interesting. Heidi grabbed a protein bar, avoiding my eyes. "There is an open house later this week," she said, her tone clipped. "For a property I think you should see. Smaller, newer, 1 floor. Perfect for you." I took a slow sip. "I will pass." Her lips tightened. "Dad, this is not optional. We cannot have you rattling around in this old place forever." I leaned back, meeting her gaze. "You say, rattling around, like I am a ghost." She flinched just a little, but recovered fast. "You are twisting my words." Wolfgang cleared his throat, still staring at his phone. "It is practical, Klaus. The market is good right now. Sell high. Buy something you can manage." "And where would you two live?" I asked. Heidi hesitated. "We would figure that out." I did not press. I had learned that silence is its own kind of power. People will rush to fill it, and in doing so, they end up revealing more than they mean to. When they left, I went straight to the study. Ingrid's desk was still there, polished smooth from years of her hands. The top drawer held a manila envelope, exactly where I had left it last week. Inside were copies of our wills, the deed to the house, and, most importantly, the changes we had made after Heidi married Wolfgang. Those changes took her out as the sole beneficiary and put the house into a living trust with conditions she would rather not know about yet. I ran my fingers over Ingrid's handwriting in the margins. She had a way of thinking 3 moves ahead. She had warned me, quietly, without bitterness, that Heidi might one day see the house as an asset before she saw it as a home. I did not want to believe her back then. Now I knew better. Later that afternoon, Max found me in the backyard. He was carrying a worn-out football, his cheeks red from the cold. "Can we throw it around?" he asked. We did. I underhanded it to him, being careful not to strain my knee. Between passes, he told me about school, about the science project he was working on, about how his mom said they might go on a big trip this summer. "Where to?" I asked. He shrugged. "Somewhere with a beach. She says it depends on selling the house." I caught the ball, holding it for a second too long. "And how do you feel about that?" Max shrugged again, but his eyes darted toward the house. "I like it here. My room. It smells like summer, even in winter." That night, while Heidi was upstairs and Wolfgang was watching TV in the den, I sat at the kitchen table with my ledger and a small lockbox. Inside were the original keys to the property, the kind most people would have replaced after 30 years. But these keys opened more than just doors. They opened memories. And they opened the hidden compartment in the basement wall, a compartment I built myself during our second year in this house. It was not big, just enough space for a few binders, a couple of sealed envelopes, and an external hard drive. Inside those binders were receipts, signed contracts, and photographs documenting every major improvement I had made to the property, along with proof that I paid for everything myself from my own accounts. Evidence, if I ever needed to show that this home was mine, long before Heidi and Wolfgang ever stepped through the front door. On Tuesday, I called my lawyer again. We scheduled a meeting for Thursday. "Bring everything," he said. "And Klaus, do not tell them a thing yet." I laughed without humor. "You think this is my first time?" Wednesday evening, Heidi came home early. She was carrying grocery bags, smiling like nothing was wrong. "I thought we could have dinner together tonight," she said, unloading pasta and salad greens. It was the first time in months she had suggested cooking for me. We ate at the table, just the 2 of us. For a while, it almost felt normal, like before Ingrid passed. Then Heidi leaned back, wine glass in hand, and said, "Dad, you know, Wolfgang and I have always tried to do what is best for you." I set down my fork. "Is that what you call it?" Her eyes narrowed. "I do not know why you are being so difficult. We are talking about making your life simpler." "My life is already simple," I said. "Wake up, make coffee, read the paper, watch the people I love turn into strangers." She did not like that. "You are being overly dramatic." I smiled faintly. "And you are being obvious." She pushed her plate away. "Fine, but do not expect me to just sit around while you make decisions that affect all of us." Thursday arrived, gray and damp. I took the bus downtown, which was just another way to throw them off. The less Heidi and Wolfgang knew about my movements, the better. At the lawyer's office, we went over the trust documents, the contingency clauses, and the account statements. He nodded in approval. "You have got them cornered, Klaus, but remember, the element of surprise is your best friend. Let them think they are winning." I knew I could do that. Back home, I found Heidi in the driveway, her phone pressed to her ear. She lowered her voice when she saw me. "Okay, we will move forward," she said into the phone, then hung up. "Who was that?" I asked. "Work," she said quickly. But I have been a father too long not to know a lie when I hear one. That night, I stayed up later than usual. I heard Wolfgang come in from the garage, muttering about timelines and contracts. I wrote those words down in a small notebook I keep on my nightstand. Every little detail matters. By Friday, there was a new tension in the house. Heidi was polite but sharp. Wolfgang was avoiding me altogether. Max sensed it, too. He spent more time in his room with his headphones on. After dinner, I called Max over. We sat in the garage, the smell of motor oil and cedar all around us. I handed him a small wrapped package. "Do not open it now," I told him. "Keep it somewhere safe. And do not tell anyone I gave it to you, not even your mom." He nodded seriously. "What is it?" "Something you will understand when you are older," I said. It was not much, just a brass key on a leather cord. But one day, it might open the right door. When I went back inside, Heidi was watching me from the hallway, her face unreadable. For the first time, I wondered if she was starting to suspect that I was not as easy to deal with as she had hoped. Good. Because being easy was never the plan. Saturday morning arrived, cold and sharp. The kind of cold that gets into your bones before you even realize you are shivering. I was in the garage again, this time with a different purpose. From a shelf in the corner, behind a stack of dusty paint cans, I pulled down a wooden crate that Ingrid and I used to store holiday decorations. But there were no lights or ornaments inside now, only manila folders, each one labeled in my handwriting. I brought the crate into the kitchen. The house was quiet. Heidi had taken Max to soccer practice, and Wolfgang was running errands, which usually meant meeting someone for a deal he did not want to explain. I sat at the table and opened the first folder. Inside were photocopies of checks from the late 1990s, receipts for every major purchase tied to the house, and, most importantly, letters Ingrid and I exchanged when we refinanced the mortgage to pay for Max's private school tuition. I traced her looping handwriting with my thumb. She always signed her letters with, "Love you more than the days ahead." For a moment, I let myself feel it. Her being gone. Then I closed the folder. Feeling could wait. Strategy could not. By the time Heidi and Max came back, the crate was gone, locked away in the basement compartment. I was in my chair with the newspaper, as if I had been there all morning. Heidi barely glanced at me when she set down her bag. "You know that open house I told you about," she said, pouring herself some water. "It is tomorrow at noon. I want you to come. No excuses. I will think about it." Her eyes got sharp. "No, Dad. You are coming. Wolfgang and I have already talked to Herr Schmidt." The way she said, "the agent," told me more than she realized. Not an agent. The agent. Meaning this was not just a casual tour. It was part of a plan that was already in motion. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Heidi, open house, agent already briefed." Sunday morning, I put on my heaviest coat and let Heidi drive me to the open house. The place was fine. Modern kitchen, no stairs, lots of light. Too perfect. Perfect in the way a cage might be perfect for the bird it is meant to hold. The agent was all smiles. "Herr Schmidt," I heard him say, "I hear you are looking for something easier to maintain." "I am not looking for anything," I said flatly. Heidi jumped in. "He is just stubborn. But we will convince him." I walked through the rooms, hands in my pockets, pretending to look at the space while taking in every detail, the too cheerful tone of the agent. The way Heidi avoided talking about the price in front of me. The fact that Wolfgang was not there, probably off dealing with something he did not want overheard. On the drive back, Heidi talked about how freeing it would be to live somewhere smaller. "You could travel more," she said. "I like it where I am," I replied. Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "You are making this harder than it has to be." I did not respond. Silence, again, was my power. Monday was when the real shift began. I got a call from my lawyer. "Klaus, the title search we ran confirms what we thought. The house is under the trust you and Ingrid set up. Any sale needs your written permission and your permission alone. That was my ace. I thanked him and told him to hold that card until I said otherwise. At lunch, I found Max in the backyard kicking a ball against the fence. You know, I said, your grandmother used to plant roses along that fence every spring. He smiled faintly. Mom told me. She said they were her favorite. They were, I said, and she planted them because she wanted something that would outlast the seasons. He tilted his head, curious. Like what you are doing now? I was caught off guard. What makes you say that? You have been different, he said. Quieter, but not sad. More like waiting for something. Kids see more than we think. Maybe I am, I told him. But it is not for something bad. That night, after everyone was in bed, I took the crate from the basement and laid everything out on the dining table. Documents, photographs, even the original mortgage contract. Then I put the USB drive with all the scans of the documents and the digital insurance policy into a padded envelope and addressed it to a friend I trust in another state. It went out with the morning mail. By Wednesday, I noticed Heidi was on the phone a lot more. She was taking calls in her car, in the laundry room, even outside on the porch with her coat pulled tight. When she hung up, she was always smiling, but it was the kind of smile you see on someone who thinks they are getting away with something. Thursday morning, Wolfgang tried to make small talk at breakfast. Thinking about heading down to Miami for a week or two, he said. No, I said. Too much to do here. He laughed, but it was tight. What is keeping you? You are retired. I met his eyes. You would be surprised. Friday evening, Heidi announced they were going out for dinner. We will be late, she said. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I got to work. From the basement compartment, I pulled out a second lockbox, smaller and older. Inside was a set of bank statements from an account Heidi and Wolfgang did not even know existed. The balance was healthy, thanks to years of careful saving and investments Ingrid and I had made on the side. I sat at the kitchen table, with the light low, and started moving certain amounts into a new account in Max's name. Not too much at once, just enough that over the next few months, it would grow into something substantial by the time he turned 18. When Heidi and Wolfgang came back, they found me in the living room, a book in my hands. Heidi asked, "Good night?" It was, I said. Saturday morning, Heidi cornered me in the hallway. Dad, I know you think we are pushing you, but this is for your own good. You cannot keep up with this house forever. Maybe not, I said. But for now, I can. She sighed. I just wish you would trust us. I smiled a thin smile. Trust is earned. Later that day, Max slipped me a folded note when no one was looking. It was in his messy handwriting. Grandpa, I heard Mom say she is meeting the agent again next week. I think they are planning something. I burned the note in the fireplace. Not because I did not believe him, but because I did. By Sunday evening, the house felt different. The air was heavy, the conversations shorter. They knew I was not giving in easily. I knew they were not giving up. And somewhere between those two truths was the collision we were all heading for. But unlike them, I was ready for the crash. By Monday morning, I had already decided I was not going to wait for Heidi and Wolfgang to make their next move. If I kept playing defense, they would be in control of the timing. And timing, in any fight worth winning, is everything. Heidi was in the kitchen making coffee when I came in. She looked up, surprised. You are up early. Couldn't sleep, I said, opening the fridge for milk I did not need. I was thinking about that open house last week. Her face brightened instantly. Oh, did it grow on you? In a way, I said. It made me realize how much I like what I have. I guess I needed to see something else to really appreciate this. Her face tightened again, and I almost smiled. 1 step forward for her, 2 steps back for them. After breakfast, I put on my old work jacket and headed out. The cold bit at my ears, but it was an honest cold, the kind that makes you feel alive. My first stop was the local credit union. I had been a member for decades, they still greeted me by name. I sat down with a manager I trusted and arranged for a safe deposit box. Inside, I put duplicates of every important document from the crate, the trust papers, the mortgage contracts, the deed, even the life insurance policy Ingrid kept in her jewelry box. When I left, I felt lighter. Heidi and Wolfgang might one day search the house, but they would not find anything that mattered. Back home, Wolfgang's truck was in the driveway. He was in the living room, laptop open, papers spread out. "You know," he said without looking up, "there is a guy at my firm who could help you with downsizing. The whole thing is easy. He even handles the estate transfers." "Not interested," I replied. He finally looked at me, smiling like a salesman. "You do not even want to hear the numbers?" "I have already run my numbers," I said. "And they work just fine." He leaned back in his chair. "You have gotten kind of private lately." I let the silence hang between us, then walked away. I know better than to fill silence with words. Silence makes people nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. That afternoon, Max came home from school and wandered into my study. "Mom has been talking to the agent again," he said in a low voice. I heard her on the phone. She told him, "He's coming around and just needs the right push." I nodded slowly. "Did she say what that push is?" He shook his head. "Just that she and Dad have a plan." I thanked him, then changed the subject. The less he felt like a spy, the safer he would be. That night, I went through the old filing cabinet in the basement. Most of it was junk, old tax records, appliance manuals. But in the bottom drawer, I found something useful, the original appraisal from when Ingrid and I bought the house. The number was laughable compared to today's market. But it proved something important: the equity here was mine. Mine and Ingrid's. Not Heidi's, not Wolfgang's. The next morning, I visited my lawyer again. "I want to add a clause to the trust," I told him. "If the house is ever sold during my lifetime, the proceeds go into a restricted account in Max's name. Not 1 single cent to Heidi or Wolfgang." He raised an eyebrow. "That is going to make for a difficult conversation later." "I am not looking for conversation," I said. "I am looking for protection." We wrote up the new amendment. I signed it. My lawyer filed it right away. By lunchtime, the paper trail was airtight. When I got home, Heidi was waiting in the hallway. "Where have you been?" "Out," I said. "With who?" "An old friend." She stared at me, trying to read something in my face. "Dad, you are not doing anything stupid, are you?" "You defined stupid," I said, and walked past her. Wednesday evening, Wolfgang suggested we all have dinner together, something we rarely do. Halfway through the meal, he brought up a friend who had just retired after selling his property. "He is traveling now. No worries about upkeep. No family drama." Heidi jumped in. "Exactly what we have been trying to tell you, Dad. You could just relax. Live a little." I set down my fork. "I am living. This is my version." Wolfgang forced a laugh, but I could see the frustration in the way he gripped his wine glass. Heidi just looked at me like she was measuring how hard she was going to have to push. Thursday morning, I made a small but deliberate move. I called a handyman to do minor repairs around the house. All the things Heidi had claimed were falling apart. A loose step on the porch, a leaky faucet, a squeaky cabinet hinge. By the end of the day, the place looked and felt more solid than it had in years. Heidi noticed. "Trying to make the house unsellable?" she asked. "Just taking care of what is mine," I replied. Friday was when I set the first real trap. I left a copy of the original trust document, not the updated one, on my desk where it was easy to see from the hallway. That night, I heard Heidi's footsteps pause outside the study, then the faint rustle of paper. I let her think she had seen something valuable. Saturday morning, she was unusually cheerful. "Dad, I have been thinking," she said. "Maybe we could all take a family trip this spring. You, me, Wolfgang, Max. Somewhere warm." It was bait. Get me out of the house. Give them room to work. "Sounds nice," I said. "I will think about it." That afternoon, Max found me in the garage. "Mom told me to make sure you are free the first week of April. She said it is important." I thanked him again, this time pressing a folded 20 into his palm for new cleats. He grinned, but his eyes were worried. By Sunday, I knew exactly what was coming. They would use the trip to get everything in motion, paperwork, signatures, maybe even changing the locks. But what they did not know was that the moment I stepped out that door, the safe deposit box, the lawyer's files, and the amended trust would make their whole plan worthless. Still, I was not ready to show my hand. Not yet. Because the best part of any good game is not winning. It is watching the other player realize they have already lost. Heidi announced it on a Tuesday evening just as I was rinsing my plate after dinner. "Dad," she said, her voice bright in a way that was always a little too planned. "Guess what? Wolfgang and I booked that trip we were talking about. First week of April, just like we planned." I dried my hands slowly, letting the towel rest on the counter before I turned to face her. "Where to?" "Florida. Warm beaches, fresh air. You will love it." She did not pause before adding, "We already put the deposit down. It is non-refundable." Wolfgang leaned against the doorway, his arms crossed, a faint smirk on his face. "It will be good for you, Klaus. You have been cooped up in this house for too long." Cooped up. The words landed in my chest like pebbles in a pond, ripples spreading outward. They were not wrong. I had been here in these walls for months. But the thing about staying in one place is, if you do it right, you learn where every board creaks, where every hinge squeaks, and where every secret should be hidden. "I will think about it," I said. Heidi's smile stiffened. "You do not have to think. We already made arrangements with the neighbor to check in on the house while we are gone." That was the real clue. If they were gone, why would the neighbor need to check in? I nodded like I believed her. "That's thoughtful." The truth was, I had been expecting this move. Ever since Max told me they were looking for the right push, I knew it would come disguised as something nice, an offer I could not reasonably refuse. But reasonable offers only work on people who do not know the other side of the equation. The days leading up to the trip were a study in subtle manipulation. Heidi started fussing over my clothes, talking about how I would need a new set of summer shirts. Wolfgang mentioned renting a car in Florida big enough for all of us, as if my going was a sure thing. One night, I caught Heidi on the phone in the hallway, her back to me. "Yes, the first week of April," she was saying. "No, he does not suspect a thing. We will have the papers ready by then." The next morning, I took a different route into town and stopped by my lawyer's office unannounced. "Change of plans," I told him. "I need you to authorize a transfer from my primary account into a separate one, with a sole beneficiary, Max. And I want it to happen while I am out of state." He adjusted his glasses. "Are you sure?" "I am certain," I said. "Think of it as moving valuables before a storm." That weekend, Max and I were in the garage cleaning out a stack of old fishing gear when he asked, "Grandpa, do you want to go on this trip?" I looked at him over the rim of my glasses. "What makes you ask that?" "Mom has been acting different. She is nicer, but it feels fake, like she is trying to keep you happy until something." He shrugged. You have got good instincts, I said. Never ignore them. He hesitated, then leaned closer. I heard Dad telling her to make sure he is packed and ready, like it was important. I smiled, not at him, but at the sheer predictability of it all. Do not worry, Max. I will be ready. The week before departure, Heidi placed a printed itinerary on the kitchen table. It was a perfect cover, flight details, hotel confirmation, and even planned outings. But there was one curious thing missing: no return flight for me. Must be a typo, she said when I pointed it out. We will fix it. She never did. That night, I took out my old leather notebook, the one Ingrid gave me on our first Christmas together. On its pages, I sketched out my final adjustments. 1. Safe deposit box keys moved to my jacket pocket. 2. Neighbor Herlausen asked to ignore any request from Heidi or Wolfgang to enter my property. 3. 2 security cameras set to record to an off-site server, motion-triggered, and aimed at the front door and garage. By the time I put the notebook away, the plan felt completely solid. Departure day arrived with the kind of pale spring sunlight that promises warmth but hides a chill. Heidi was chirpy and Wolfgang was unusually quiet. Max lingered in the doorway as we loaded bags into the car. "Bye, Grandpa," he said, his voice carrying more weight than it should for 2 simple words. I bent down, pretending to check a zipper. "Keep an eye on things for me, will you?" He nodded, his eyes wide. We got to the airport without a problem. At the gate, Heidi kept glancing at her phone. Wolfgang disappeared twice, coming back with flimsy excuses about checking the flight board. When boarding was called, they insisted I go ahead. The flight was pleasant enough, at least on the surface, but underneath every polite exchange, I felt the undertow of their plan pulling closer. 2 days into the trip, I found my moment. While Heidi and Wolfgang lounged by the pool, I said I was going to take a walk. Instead, I found a quiet corner of the hotel lobby and made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer. Execute the transfer now. The second was to Herlausen. Everything still quiet? All quiet, he said. But your son-in-law came by yesterday. Wanted me to let him into the garage. Said you had asked him to grab something. I told him no. Good man, I replied. When I returned to the pool, Heidi was on her phone, her voice low and urgent. She hung up the second she saw me. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she said too quickly. Wolfgang avoided my eyes. By the 4th day, the cracks in their composure were showing. They were restless, distracted. Heidi kept disappearing to make calls. Wolfgang drank more than usual at dinner. That night, I caught part of a whispered argument through the thin hotel walls. You said it would be done by now, Wolfgang hissed. Well, it is not my fault, Heidi snapped. He did not leave the documents where they were supposed to be. I smiled in the dark. They were looking for the old trust papers, the ones I had left out as bait, but they did not know they were worthless. On the last morning in Florida, Heidi approached me at breakfast, her face carefully blank. Dad. Wolfgang and I have to take care of something this afternoon. Do you mind staying at the hotel? Not at all, I said. The moment they left, I opened my laptop and checked the security feed from home. At 2:10 in the afternoon, Wolfgang's truck pulled into my driveway. At 10:15, Heidi joined him. They tried the front door first, then the garage. Both were locked. After a minute of frustrated gesturing, Wolfgang pulled out his phone, probably to call the locksmith they had arranged. But Herlausen appeared on the footage, crossing the yard with his dog. Whatever Wolfgang said to him, Herlausen shook his head. Heidi tried, too, with all her bright smiles and hand gestures. Still no. After 5 minutes, they left, their plan stopped dead in its tracks. I closed the laptop and ordered myself a slice of key lime pie. On the flight home, Heidi was quiet. Wolfgang was moody. Only Max seemed genuinely happy to see me when we pulled up to the house. "How was the trip?" he asked. "Relaxing," I said. "And productive." Heidi shot me a look, but I just smiled. Because the truth was, this round was mine, and I had no intention of losing the next one. The first morning back from Florida was quiet. Too quiet. Heidi did not greet me in the kitchen the way she usually did when she wanted to keep up appearances. Wolfgang did not come in from the garage whistling some half-tuned melody. Instead, there was just the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of Max's video game upstairs. I sat at the table with my coffee, staring at the steam rising from the mug, letting the silence stretch. Silence, I had learned, can be louder than any confrontation. When Heidi finally appeared, her hair pulled back tighter than usual, she avoided my eyes. "Morning," she muttered, reaching for the cupboard. "Morning," I replied. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me, tapping her fingers on the table. "Dad, about the trip, it was nice, was not it?" "It was," I said evenly. "Relaxing. Gave me time to think." That made her look up just for a moment before she covered it up with a sip of coffee. Wolfgang came in a few minutes later, but his usual easy swagger was gone. He moved a little slower, like a man trying not to draw attention to himself. I noticed a faint scuff on his shoes, dust that definitely was not Florida sand. "You two settle whatever it was you were dealing with while we were gone?" I asked casually, stirring sugar into my cup. Heidi froze. Wolfgang looked at her before answering. "Yeah, nothing to worry about." I smiled into my coffee. "Good. I would hate for you to have wasted a trip." The next few days, I played my part perfectly. I went about my usual routine, tending to the garden, reading in the afternoons, and chatting with Max about his school projects. Outwardly, everything was normal. Inwardly, I was tightening the net. On Wednesday, I called my lawyer again. "Time for step 2, I said. He chuckled. "You always did prefer a slow game, Klaus." "This one requires it," I replied. Step 2 was simple but devastating. A quiet change to my will, leaving the house to Max, held in a trust until he turned 25. Heidi and Wolfgang would not see a single cent from it. Not unless they somehow decided to rebuild the bridge they had been burning for years. Friday evening, Max came into my study holding a sheet of paper. "Grandpa, is this yours?" I found it under the couch. It was one of the fake trust documents I had left out weeks ago, the same ones Heidi and Wolfgang had been so desperate to find in Florida. "Thanks, kiddo," I said, taking it from him. "Probably just slipped out of my folder." "Mom was looking for something like this," he said before leaving. "Said it was important." I sat there for a while after he left, the paper in my hands. Max was not trying to stir up trouble. He was just telling me what he had seen. But it confirmed something important. Heidi had not given up. She was still looking for leverage. That weekend, I decided to give them just enough rope. At breakfast on Saturday, I mentioned offhand that I would be going into town to take care of some paperwork. Heidi's eyes narrowed slightly. Wolfgang just kept eating his toast, but his jaw worked a little harder. When I returned that afternoon, I left a small manila envelope on my desk in plain sight. Inside was nothing but blank paper, but I had written "Property Transfer Final" on the outside in big letters. By evening, it was gone. Heidi avoided me for the rest of the night. Wolfgang pretended to watch television, but I could see him glancing toward the hallway where she was pacing on the phone. Sunday, the real cracks started to show. I was in the backyard pruning the rose bushes when I heard raised voices from the kitchen. "You cannot just wave it in front of him like that," Wolfgang hissed. "Well, what do you want me to do? He's not handing anything over." Heidi shot back. Then we make him, Wolfgang said. I stepped closer to the open window, the thorn of a rose pressing lightly into my thumb. Not yet, Heidi replied, quieter now. We need to know exactly what he's done. If he's changed the documents, we're screwed. They were already screwed. They just did not know how badly. That night, Max knocked on my door. Grandpa, Mom and Dad are different lately. They fight a lot. Sometimes, I said carefully, people fight when they think something important is slipping away. Are they losing something? I looked at him for a long moment. Not you, I said finally. Never you. On Monday, I made my move. I invited Heidi and Wolfgang to sit down with me after dinner. I have been thinking, I began, folding my hands on the table. About the future, about this house. Heidi's eyes flickered hopefully. I know you have been worried about what happens to it when I am gone, I continued. Wolfgang leaned forward. Well, yeah. We just want to make sure that Max is taken care of. Heidi cut in quickly. Exactly. Which is why I have made arrangements. I did not tell them what those arrangements were. I did not need to. The ambiguity was the point. It would gnaw at them, keep them guessing, make them wonder how much they had already lost. For the next week, I kept the pressure steady. I would leave folders on my desk with half-visible titles, make short phone calls in low tones, and step outside to take important calls whenever Heidi was nearby. Each time, I could feel their anxiety climb higher. By Friday, Wolfgang's patience snapped. I came home from a walk to find him in my study, rifling through drawers. Looking for something? I asked from the doorway. He jumped, slamming the drawer shut. Just thought I would fix that loose handle you mentioned. I did not mention any loose handle, I said, my voice calm but edged. Heidi appeared in the hallway, her face pale. Wolfgang, can you help me in the kitchen? She said quickly. He brushed past me without meeting my eyes. That night, I moved the final piece into place. I called my lawyer again, this time to schedule the signing of the amended will for just a few days away. As I hung up, I glanced at the closed door to my study. In the hallway, I could hear Heidi whispering to Wolfgang, her voice tight. If he signs whatever that is, it is over, she said. She was right. I went to bed that night with a strange calm. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was not reacting to them. They were reacting to me. And they did not even realize the real storm had not hit yet. It started with the sound of drawers opening and closing, soft at first like someone trying to be careful. I was in the backyard trimming the last of the hydrangeas, the cold air biting at my fingertips when I heard it through the cracked kitchen window. By the time I stepped inside, Heidi's voice had already taken on that low, urgent tone she used when she was trying to control Wolfgang. Not here. Wait until he's out, she said. I'm telling you, we can do it now. He's in the garden, Wolfgang hissed back. They did not even hear me come in. I stood at the threshold for a moment, letting the weight of the scene press into me. This was my house, my table, my kitchen. And here they were, like rats picking through the pantry. I cleared my throat. Heidi spun around, her face snapping into a smile too quickly to be real. Dad, you are back early. Wolfgang's hand was still on the drawer handle. Just looking for a screwdriver, he mumbled. I looked at him for a long moment, then at Heidi. Everything you need in this house is exactly where it has always been. If you cannot find it, maybe you are looking for something that was never yours. Her smile faltered. Wolfgang glanced at her, then moved past me without another word. That night, I sat alone in my study with the lights off. From upstairs came the muffled thump of Max dropping something heavy, followed by his laughter, innocent, unaware. And for his sake, I intended to keep it that way. On my desk lay the amended will, the one leaving the house in trust to Max. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if it already carried the weight of the years ahead. I thought about Ingrid, how she had insisted on planting those hydrangeas, how she had stood in this very room telling me we should always plan for the next generation. She would have hated what Heidi had become. 2 days later, the invitation came. Heidi knocked on my door mid-morning, her voice sugar-coated but brittle underneath. "Dad, Wolfgang and I thought maybe we could have dinner together tonight. Just us adults. Max is sleeping over at a friend's." I could hear the effort in her tone, like a salesman rehearsing a pitch. "Sounds fine," I said, pretending not to notice. She smiled too wide and left before I could ask any questions. Dinner was set at the big dining table, the one we only used on holidays. Heidi had gone all out, roast chicken, potatoes, a bottle of wine already uncorked. Wolfgang was dressed better than usual, collared shirt and hair combed back. We made small talk for a while, Heidi asking about the garden, Wolfgang nodding at all the right moments. Then, as soon as the plates were cleared, the real reason for the evening came out. Heidi reached under the table and placed a folder in front of me. The paper inside was crisp and new. "What is this?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Just some paperwork," she said lightly. "To make things easier, you know, in case something happens." Wolfgang leaned in. "It is just a transfer of ownership. Keeps everything in the family." "In the family," I repeated, my voice flat. Interesting choice of words. Heidi's smile tightened. "Dad, we just want to make sure there is no confusion later. No messy legal stuff." I flipped the first page. The language was clear. They wanted the deed to the house signed over to them immediately. "No conditions, no trust for Max, you would keep living here, of course," Wolfgang added quickly. "Nothing would change. Nothing would change, except everything." I set the folder down and folded my hands. "You have been busy." Heidi's voice sharpened. "We are just being practical. You are not getting any younger, Dad. And it is not safe for you to handle all this alone." "Not safe," I said slowly. "Yet somehow safe enough for me to build it, pay for it, and maintain it for decades." She flushed. Wolfgang looked away. "I am not signing this," I said finally. Heidi's smile vanished. "If you do not, we will have to consider other options." "Other options?" I repeated. "Like what?" Wolfgang's voice was quieter now, almost rehearsed. "Look, we have been talking to someone about guardianship." "Guardianship?" I cut in, my tone sharp enough to make them both flinch. Heidi pressed on. "It is just, if a doctor says you are not able to make decisions." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "So that is the plan. Declare me incompetent. Take the house and call it, for my good." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "I will tell you what is going to happen. You are going to stop digging through my drawers. You are going to stop plotting behind my back. And you are going to remember that this house, this life, was built without either of you lifting a finger." Heidi's voice trembled, whether from anger or fear, I could not tell. "You cannot keep it forever, Dad." I met her gaze. "Watch me." After they left the table, I went to my study. The folder they had given me sat there, a snake coiled and waiting. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and slid it in, not to keep, but to remind myself exactly who I was dealing with. I spent the next hour writing a letter to my lawyer, outlining everything that had happened, every threat implied or spoken. I made 3 copies and stored them in 3 different places. If Heidi and Wolfgang thought they could scare me into giving in, they had underestimated just how far ahead I was willing to think. The following morning, Max wandered into the kitchen while I was making coffee. "Grandpa, why did Mom and Dad look so mad last night?" I kept my back to him for a moment, steadying my voice. Sometimes, I said, people get upset when they cannot get what they want. Did you do something? He asked, tilting his head. I turned and smiled faintly. Maybe I just remembered whose name is on the front of this house. He grinned, not fully understanding, but I could see the comfort in his eyes. That was enough. Heidi and Wolfgang avoided me for the next 2 days, but I could feel the tension, like static in the air. They were not done, not by a long shot, and neither was I. On the third night, I heard them talking in their bedroom. The walls in this house carry sound, especially when people forget they are not alone. We have to push harder, Heidi was saying. If he changes the will. Wolfgang cut in. We need proof. We cannot force anything without it. I smiled in the dark. Proof was something they would never get. I had made sure of it. The last move in this part of the game came quietly. I invited Max to help me in the garden that Saturday, just the two of us. As we planted the last row of bulbs, I told him, one day, all of this will be yours, but you do not have to rush to get it. The best things are worth waiting for. He looked up at me, puzzled but curious. Even houses? Especially houses, I said. Inside, I could see Heidi watching us from the kitchen window, her face unreadable. She knew. She just did not know how little time she had left before everything slipped out of her grasp. The morning of my lawyer's visit, the sky was the kind of gray that makes you think of endings. Clouds hung low over the street, heavy with rain that had not yet decided to fall. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching the condensation run down the window. Heidi and Wolfgang were upstairs, their voices muffled but sharp at the edges. Even without catching the words, I could hear the rhythm, frustration and urgency tangled together. They were running out of time, and they knew it. Max wandered in, hair sticking up, pajamas still wrinkled from sleep. Morning, Grandpa. Morning, buddy. Hungry? He nodded, and I set a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. As he ate, I watched his face. Ingrid's eyes, my mother's stubborn chin. He deserved better than to grow up thinking family was just another word for leverage. At 10 sharp, there was a knock. I opened the door to find Herr Schmidt, my attorney for over a decade and a half, standing there with his leather briefcase. Morning, Klaus, he said, stepping in. Heidi's voice floated down. Who is that? Herr Schmidt, I called up. He is here to go over some paperwork. By the time she reached the bottom step, Herr Schmidt was already at the dining table, documents spread out like a silent verdict. Heidi crossed her arms. You could have told us you had company. I did not realize I needed clearance, I said. Wolfgang came in from the hallway, trying to keep his expression neutral and failing. Herr Schmidt cleared his throat. Shall we begin? I nodded. Go ahead. He slid the first document toward me. This is the deed transfer, moving the house and the lake cabin into an irrevocable trust for Max. You retain full residence rights for life. Upon your passing, it transfers to him directly. No other parties have a claim. The pen felt heavy in my hand, but the moment the nib met the paper, something in me lightened. The scratch of my signature sounded like the turning of a lock. Heidi's face drained of color. You are giving it all to Max? Not all, I said, meeting her eyes. Just the parts you were planning to take. Wolfgang stepped forward. You cannot. Herr Schmidt cut in, his voice calm. He can, and he has. Heidi's tone sharpened. Dad, we were only trying to help. Help. I let the word hang. By going through my drawers? By having conversations with lawyers about declaring me incompetent? That is not helpful. That is theft in a nice suit. Her lips parted, but no words followed. Herr Schmidt, I said. The next one. He placed a single-page letter before me. Revocation of all previous power of attorney agreements. From today, only the appointed trustee can act on your behalf. Heidi's jaw tightened. And who is that? Max is too young. I am the trustee, Herr Schmidt said. I will act until he is of age. Wolfgang's voice rose. So we are cut out completely? You cut yourselves out, I said evenly, when you stopped seeing me as a father and started seeing me as a signature. The silence after that was not awkward. It was final. Heidi turned abruptly and left the room. Wolfgang followed, muttering under his breath. After Herr Schmidt gathered the signed papers, he looked at me. This will hold, but stay alert. People who feel entitled do not just walk away. I know, I said. When he left, I stood by the window, watching the first drops of rain hit the driveway. That evening, Max came to sit beside me on the porch. Mom's upset, he said. She will live. She said you took the house away from her. I did not take anything, I told him. I just kept it from going where it did not belong. Will it always be here? As long as you remember why it matters, I said. 2 days later, Heidi and Wolfgang moved out. They did not say goodbye. The quiet they left behind was strange at first, but not unwelcome. I left doors open, letting the smell of rain drift through rooms that had felt shut for too long. I fixed the squeaky porch step, repaired the loose shutter that Ingrid used to scold me about. Slowly, the house started to feel mine again, not just on paper. Weeks passed. Max still came by often. Sometimes he helped me in the garden. One Saturday, as we planted tulips, he asked, "Why did you not just give them what they wanted? Would not that be easier?" I set the trowel down. Easier, sure, but easier is not the same as right. You give away what you built just to avoid a fight? You lose more than the thing. You lose yourself. He nodded, his eyes narrowing like he was filing it away for the future. The day the trust papers came back, stamped from the courthouse, I sat at the table with tea in hand, reading the official confirmation, the house, the cabin, the land, all secured for Max. That night, I walked through every room, touching the frames, the worn banister, the glass panes Ingrid once polished until they shone. I did it, I whispered to her armchair. They will not touch it. Not now. Not after I am gone. The house seemed to settle in agreement. And then came the twist. A week later, while clearing out the upstairs closet Heidi had used, I found a small wooden box tucked behind an old suitcase. Inside was Ingrid's silver locket, which had been missing for over a year. I had assumed Heidi pawned it, but there was also a folded piece of paper. "Dad," it began. "I know you think the worst of me, and maybe you are right. I cannot undo what I did, but I could not keep this. It is hers, and it is yours. I am sorry, Heidi." I stood there, the locket warm in my palm, the note trembling slightly in my other hand. It was not redemption, but it was not nothing. People think winning ends when you have won. But sometimes it ends when you see the smallest crack in the wall you have built, proof that even in all the greed and betrayal, there is still a thread of something human left. And I did not know if that made things harder or easier, but I knew this: the house was safe. Max's future was safe. And maybe, just maybe, Heidi's soul was not beyond saving. This journey showed me that a home is more than wood and nails, it is a legacy. What we build for others is what truly lasts.